Hello and welcome to the next episode of my Breaking Lies, Building Truth podcast. You're so welcome here, whether you are listening or whether you're watching on my YouTube channel. This will be my final podcast for 2023, and we are going to finish off by finishing a conversation I had started a couple of months ago, all to do with hair loss. Part one of the episode was all about my journey with hair loss. You've since been in contact with me, so today's episode is all about your journey with hair loss. Thank you so much to those of you who got in contact over the last couple of months that have been so vulnerable, voice notes, emails, private messages on social media, to the fact that you've actually opened up and been that honest with me. I know that you know that it's going to be shared on a PNC level, on an anonymous level, but still to take the time to reach out and be that vulnerable. Not an easy thing to do, a very brave thing to do, so thank you so much. So I have taken some time to almost try and amalgamate together a number of the points that have come out of your stories. The whole point of this episode is about me representing your voice when it comes to your journey with hair loss. And as I mentioned in episode 1, sometimes we can find ourselves in the silent majority when it comes to hair loss, because perhaps our hair loss isn't connected to an extreme medical doctor's report. It can be other reasons that we have experienced a season or seasons of losing our hair. But if we fall into that comparison trap, then we can think that our journey with hair loss isn't as dramatic or isn't as big a deal as the person to the left or right of us. And as a result, we can then swallow our emotions, swallow the stress that we've actually walked through, and don't really feel like we've got anybody to share it with. Therefore, it can be a lonely journey. And that's why I made a decision a number of months ago to be open about the journey that I have gone on with hair loss, in the hope of even one or two of you realising that you weren't alone in yours. So definitely, with the response I've had, we're definitely not alone. And with my Breaking Lies and Building Truth podcast, particularly as I go into 2024, it is about us continuing to look at these subject matters and helping each other realise that we're not alone in some of the things that we have to walk through. So, as I said, I try to amalgamate a number of the different experiences that you ladies in particular have had with the journey of hair loss. And actually, it just so happened that there were two stories in particular that, when I looked at it, almost covered every point that the other stories that came in mentioned. So for the purposes of time, I've decided to consolidate it by sharing these two stories anonymously, and then I'll add in a little more after it. Okay, so the first story that came through from a lady, and both of these interestingly were voice notes. So I've written it out verbatim, which is why for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm going to be reading out what they've said in order to honour their voice. So lady number 1 said, "Loads of what you said was just parallel to what I had been going through. But even saying to yourself, as you mentioned, oh, in the grand scheme of things, come on, girl. But like you, I had the full head of hair. Everybody complimented it. You know, it was your kind of thing. Then for that to be taken away, it's a massive identity thing." And I noticed at that point she nervously laughed on her voice note. So obviously there's a vulnerability there. The whole idea that our hair can be tied into our identity, and that's something that resonated with me too. And I just know that there's going to be so many who relate to it too. For me, when I was seeing those clumps of hair coming out, it was taking me back to like whenever I'd had my son. You know, whenever you've had a baby and you experience hair loss. So even that was triggering for me. Also, I love this bit. Also, one of mine and my husband's little things that we do every night, he'd play with my hair. And it's like a wee connection between us. Like his show of love for me, if you know what I mean. And I wouldn't even let him do that anymore. And at this point, her voice began to break in the voice note. And there's just so much around that, and I know what you're saying is going to help so many people, and no doubt you'll have many women saying, me too. I loved your line of, you are not your hair, or my hair is not me, or something like that. And then she laughed and she said, I loved that. So a few things to unpack there, but thank you so much. to the lady who I most likely will be listening to this, who shared that with us all. And I wonder, are there things in that already that resonate for you? Lady number 2. I experienced postpartum hair loss. It is very unnerving when big clumps of hair come out in the shower. Already, do you see a through line? So big clumps of hair coming out in the shower, or you brush your hair and your hairbrush is full of hair. Especially when you have long hair and you have long thick hair and you've always had long thick hair. Or when you are vacuuming up and you look in the little compartment or the wheels of the vacuum and they're completely just full of your hair and you have to clean it, otherwise it won't work. All of these little things can be very triggering. So I thought I'd share a bit of my journey with you. I started to have hair falling out probably 6 to 8 weeks postpartum, and I just ignored it because I thought, oh sure, you've long hair, so hair will probably come out because you shed hair when you've long hair. But whenever it started coming out in clumps in the shower, it was really worrying. Then I started getting regrowth, and regrowth is almost worse than the hair loss. I wonder if this resonates with any of you. The regrowth is almost worse than the hair loss because you find it very difficult to style your hair. If I put my hair up in a ponytail, I look like I have horns growing out the front of my head from where the regrowth is coming back either side. And then I also have some hair sticking out behind my ears that looks like someone has cut it. And again, that's just the regrowth. So I think it's good that you said you don't want to diminish the feelings that you have, even when other people go through far worse hair loss. So again, that's just something I really want to encourage you. Don't be diminishing what you're going through by looking at somebody who's going through it on an extreme level. Real talk, this is your life and your journey and you are still having to go through it. So don't diminish it, yeah? Sit with it, acknowledge it, talk to somebody about it, get it out. So to go back to this lady's story, but I just find that and other things postpartum that happened were reminders of how powerful my body has been to give everything I can to my little girl, especially as I have been breastfeeding. It takes all the nutrients out of my body to give to her so she can be strong, to help her fight off anything. And my body sacrifices to make her healthy. I thought that was a beautiful perspective. I would even choose to make that sacrifice because that's just motherly instinct. But you do lose a bit of yourself postpartum because your body totally changes. Lots of things you've got to come to terms with, and hair loss is just one of them. Even my journey to getting pregnant, I wasn't able to dye my hair. I used to go religiously every 6 to 8 weeks to get my highlights done and go to the hairdressers regularly. And it's not something I've been able to do the last sort of couple of years. So even that has been a journey. But I think it's about reminding myself of that sacrifice and the reasons behind it. And I think it's really powerful that your body can tell you that there's something beg your pardon, I'll read that again. And I think it's really powerful that your body can tell you that there's something wrong or not quite right that needs to be dealt with. Our bodies are amazing. Although it can give you insecurities, it's our body's way of telling us that, in my case, your sacrifice is making your child healthy. Others, it could be saying that you have a deficiency, like it was with me personally. Or if people are having medical treatment, that's a sacrifice so you can become healthy again. It's about understanding that there's a reason behind it, and it doesn't make you any less of a person. It's actually a very clever thing that our body does, and we should feel empowered by it and amazed that our body can show us signs of things. For example, Marcia, your body has told you what is wrong. You've been able to get the treatment you need, which will then lead to regrowth and things improving. That's true, that's happening. So I hope it's okay to share my story. How fantastic, how amazing. Thank you so much as well to the lady that shared that story of her postpartum journey. And I want to reiterate again to the rest of you, but hopefully for the rest of you, you'll understand why I chose those two stories, because perhaps you'll have heard a bit of your story in that. There were so many things that were covered in that, but I'll just highlight a few of the things that stood out for me. One of the ladies talked about her regular trip to the hairdressers, and where I could kind of relate to that was I would go to the hairdressers regularly for blow dries, and normally the hairdresser would have to block out an hour and a half to get through my hair, because the hair you see today, for those of you watching online, and if I describe to the people who are listening, the thickness and heaviness of hair I have now is half the amount that I used to have. So if I was to pull all my hair over to one side, the weight of that would have been the weight of one side of my hair, if that makes sense. So you can imagine why then it took it took an hour and a half to blow dry my hair. What I have noticed of late, just the sensitivity of my hairdresser and the girls that wash my hair. It's very clear that, because I shared with them the journey I'm on, they become very mindful and want to support me in my vulnerability with it all. So they have started to slow down. The shampoo and the conditioner and the head massage, my hairdresser does a blow dry. She has begun to slow down a little bit as well. Now, they don't know that I've picked up on it, but I have, because get this, even with them slowing down, my appointment is still probably running less than an hour. So technically, if they were to still do things at the speed they used to, really, the blow dry would take 45 minutes. So where before it took an hour and a half, it now takes 45 minutes. And it's really interesting what that even can do to your mind, because you're going there regularly, and it's that regular little reminder of you don't have the same amount of hair that you used to have. I wonder, does that resonate with anyone? So that was something that stood out in one of the ladies' stories to me as well. Yes, and then in the first story, what I thought was really interesting, and again I wanted to try and break a lie in it, because for any of you that it resonated with, and if not, then purely for the lady that shared, she was talking about the connection between her and her husband, and how her husband would play with her hair and how she wouldn't let him anymore. I can understand that, but the lie that I want to break there straight away is, I'm sure you're listening, but your husband isn't playing with your hair because he loves the thickness of your hair. The lie in your mind wants you to think that's what it is. Your husband is playing with your hair because he loves you. That's it. It's his form of, there's 5 different love languages, and one of them is touch. That human connection, that human touch with you. A lot of men aren't necessarily good with the love language of words of affirmation. So perhaps they show their love through things of like acts of service, making sure that your car is running or whatever, and things like touch. So your husband, who is having that little habit of playing with your hair every night, that's his way of saying that he loves you. It has got nothing to do with the amount of hair you have. It has got nothing to do with how thick or thin your hair is. It's purely because he loves you. And I think that's something really important. If I can just flesh that out a little bit, if I think about my own insecurities that the hair loss journey brought up in me. I have shared this with you in part 1, the old residue of a lie of thinking that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't pretty enough, that all started to come up, and I had to remember, hold on a second, my identity isn't in my hair. Yet I have a really good darling friend who colours my hair, and he talks about the joy his vocation, his occupation gives him, because of the joy he sees his clients leave with. There is something about our hair, it's our mane, it just sets off the look, so to speak. So yeah, it's a really sensitive one, because we do have to be careful that it doesn't become our identity. We do have to do the work to remind ourselves of the truth, that, like that little India Ari lyric that I mentioned in the last episode, I am not my hair. Our hair does not define who we are. Our beauty, our worth, our value is not determined by the amount of hair that is on our head. Similarly, how other people view us, or the love, the acceptance, the affirmation that we receive from others, is not and should not be based on the amount of hair that we have. But again, the lies will have a field day in your mind and your heart and your soul when you look in the mirror to try and torture you and try to trap you. And it's interesting because obviously part 1 of this podcast went out in September. Part two was supposed to go out in October. Life got in the way. It is what it is. But, you know, again, I just love the timing of things. I can't help but feel the timing of this episode going out was meant to be. Because for those of you who are maybe watching this later, this is mid-December 2023. And, you know, we're coming into a very busy social time. Lots of events in our social calendars. And again, this could be where if you are in real time walking through the hair loss journey, the lies want to trap you to ensure that you don't even go out, or if you do go out into these environments, you're just so filled with an inferiority complex that you're not even able to enjoy that what's supposed to be your time off, your downtime, your time to celebrate the reason for the season, that in fact you're just so distracted that your joy gets stolen, that you actually carry stress, that you find excuses to leave events early or find excuses not to go at all. Therefore, again, another a way that the lies come in to try and divide, to try and ensure that you miss out on human connection, and human connection is so important. I just really wanted to highlight that as we're coming into this social season. If you are walking through the hair loss journey, to be aware of how the lies will try to trap you. And trust me when I say, out in social arenas, as you go about your social events, you will walk into the room and think that all eyes are on you and that everybody's talking about you, and if anybody happens to look your way or you hear people laughing, you can fall into the trap. The paranoia, the lies will try and tell you that they're talking about you, that they're laughing at you, that they're saying, oh my goodness, look at her lack of hair. Let me break that lie. Human nature is such that everybody else in the room, really, majority of them, will not be thinking about you and whether you have a lot of hair or not at that event. Why? Because they're busy thinking about themselves, because they're so caught up in their own insecurities. They're caught up in their own social anxieties, and particularly after COVID, something I have noticed more than ever before is people are way more socially anxious. Even the most extroverted people are saying to me, I don't understand when I'm getting ready to go out for a night, why I feel so insecure. Okay, so please hold on to that truth. For those of you who are journeying with hair loss and are expected to be out at social events over this Christmas and New Year period, remember the majority of people in the room are so consumed with their own insecurities. Our land, our world, our nation is so insecure. So trust me when I say there will be very few people. And even when people are looking at you, and I've talked about this before as well, generally people will look at a part of you physically that they feel insecure about. Yeah, we can fall into this comparison thing. So people will be looking at perhaps other elements of you. In fact, I can't get over the amount of people who I've met for the first time over the last couple of months who don't know me and therefore haven't listened to part one of the hair loss episode about my journey. The amount of them, one of the first things they say to me is, oh my gosh, look at your hair, you have so much hair. And I'm thinking to myself, if only they knew, but catch that. If you experience that, catch that. Sorry, I just clicked in the microphone again. Still getting used to this. But catch that. Listen to what people say when you know that it's truth. The truth will find a way of getting the truth through to you, if you get me. For those brand new people that don't know me and don't know my story, for them to be saying to me, each one of them, oh, look at your hair, your lovely hair. Catch it, that's truth. So how people view my hair is so different to how I view it. And I hope that encourages you as well. Now, let me look through my notes because I did write a few things down. I want to see if I've actually checked everything. Yes, I've mentioned all of those things. Right. Yes, I've actually touched on most of it. Which brings me, I suppose, then to the final point that I want to share with this is that if what I'm saying is true, to use the example again of lady number one, sorry, it sounds so crass, but the lady that talked about that connection with her husband and how she wouldn't let him play with her hair anymore. As I said just in this episode a few minutes ago, that husband is playing with his wife's hair because he loves her, not because of the thickness of the hair. You know, the people in your world that you socialize with, they love you unconditionally. They love you because of who you are, not because of the amount of hair that you have on your head. Now, there'll be a number of you that are walking through the hair loss journey right now that know that. You already know that. So what does that leave? If you're not controlled, consumed, or worried about what society says or what social media dictates when it comes to hair, all those commercials, if you know the truth that your loved ones accept you and love you for who you are, not because of the amount of hair that you have, then who does that leave in terms of speaking lies over yourself? And for many of you, it's you. Often in life, the one thing that's standing in the way of us progressing, standing in the way of us overcoming, standing in the way of us experience joy, being fearless, stepping out in confidence, is ourselves. I say this softly. I am your cheerleader. I'm on your side. That's why I'm doing these podcasts. But maybe perhaps over this Christmas season, take a moment to sit with your thoughts and ask yourself, on this journey of vulnerability that I'm having with hair loss, what really is the main stumbling block? Is it others? Or is it me? Is it actually what I think about myself? Or going deeper than that, is it what I think that others will think about me? Let me challenge that. I talk to my clients about, give me your evidence and I'll agree with you. And that thought, that's when they give me permission to challenge their thinking. Because often my clients will say, well, I just know they're thinking da 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 da. And it's usually something negative. And I'm like, okay, show me your evidence for that. What? Show me your evidence that what you believe that person's thinking about you is actually what they're thinking about you. Let me encourage you. We don't really have the right to try and work out what other people are thinking about us. That's assuming. If we were to take that to court, we'd hear, objection, Your Honour, speculation, okay? But the lies want to get you caught up in that. They don't want you to be anchored in truth. The lies want to spin these spiders' webs in your mind that create knots in your stomach, that get you swirling, that almost bring on a form of dizziness in a way, by getting you to think this is what everybody else is going to be thinking about you. But unless you have the evidence for it, unless you have concrete evidence for it, you need to recognize that for what it is and you need to let it go. Okay, so I want you over this Christmas period, before you enter into 2024, because I want us to try and shift our thinking in the midst of our vulnerability, of journeying with hair loss. Ask yourself the question, where does the vulnerability come from? Is it because I didn't realize how much my confidence and identity was in it? Is it because I'm worried about what other people think? Is it because I think I'll be rejected by loved ones? Or is it really and truly more to do with how I see myself and how I accept myself? And if I don't have a full head of hair, or if I'm not, full glam, so to speak, does that mean that I cannot accept myself? And so we can find in life that actually the one thing that's getting in the way is actually us. The one thing that's stopping us from stepping out, the one thing that's stopping us from overcoming fears, the one thing that's stopping us from building confidence is actually ourselves. So if you are finding yourself journeying through, yes, as I said that here, if you find yourself that you are journeying through the vulnerability that comes with hair loss, maybe use this as an opportunity to begin to look at yourself and think, well, what's this all about? Like, the hair will grow back. It seems for the majority of people, even in the extreme medical sacrifices of hair, it grows back, and we've seen that, right? So what's going on there within us? And what we will tend to find as we begin to do the discovery work, it's all tied into our identity. So something that can be really helpful, because the work can be the walk, and the walk can be a lonely one when you are navigating hair loss, is to open up and talk to somebody about it, like a trusted loved one. But you can actually pre-clause it by saying to them, look, I'm not looking for you to come up with some kind of an answer or a solution. I just need to talk this out. It's very, very important that we're talking out the overwhelm. For example, anxiety is unprocessed thought. You need to talk it out. But actually, one of the most important things that happens when you talk it out is actually you hear yourself. And what I find a lot with my clients is that there can be a lie that has been consuming them in their minds, trapping them in this spider's web, when then they go and they say it out loud to me enough, and they'll say, oh, that's the first time I've actually said that out loud. And when I say to them, well, how are you finding that? How does that sit with you? They then say, gosh, that's so weird, because now that I'm hearing myself say it, I know it not to be true. That's so weird. Why have I believed this about myself? Because I know it's not true, right? So that's something I want to encourage you. And perhaps if you are in real time journeying through this, perhaps over your Christmas period going into the new year, that is something you can do. You can begin to talk it through with somebody, just so you can hear how you think. What else have I written down here? Yes. Okay, so one of the things when I was going through my journey that I did was I was determined to not get caught up in the lies of it by shifting myself out of my feelings and into something a little bit more proactive. I wasn't denying my feelings. I used that to ask myself the questions of what's going on here. But one of the best questions that helped me, I suppose, remain balanced emotionally as I walked through it was saying, well, what can I learn in this? If I ever go through a difficult season in my life, I always ask myself, what can I learn from this? What can I take from this? What can I apply to my life moving forward should I ever experience this again, right? And so again, for you, like, I want to encourage you. We've heard it from some of the stories today. The hair does grow back. I'm starting to experience that now, that because I use my voice out loud and then started to do the discovery work, not only have I built a stronger confidence and identity of who I am that's not based on my hair, but I've now found the solution. It was a deficiency, as I mentioned before. Starting to take what I need, so I'm starting to see the hair grow back. So for you, over the Christmas period, maybe take the time and ask yourself, what can I learn in this? Is there deeper work within that I need to do to work out why this is such a loss to me, or because of how uncomfortable it's making me? Because fundamentally, the majority of the stuff and the insecurities and issues in our life, they all come back to how we view ourselves. So there's the surface lies of society and social media and comparison and others and our culture and our upbringing. But when we strip all those little surfaces away of lies, the main lie/truth is all to do with how we see ourselves. So maybe use this season to ensure that the feelings don't consume you, and that actually, as you come out the other side of this, you're going to come out of it more empowered. What else have I written down here? Yes. I've said all of that. And that's the thing as well, you want to, in that discovery work, you need to work out for yourself, what is your truth actually anchored in? What is your truth sourced in? Or has your life up until this point, is it more dependent on the lies whereby you're easily swayed, when the storms of life come? If it's like if your life is a house, does it just get swallowed up when the waves come upon the shore? Or is your identity sourced in a truth that can anchor, that even if the storms come, it can't take you out? So that could be something for you to look at. And yes, the reason it's been good for me to share these other people's stories, and have been a real honor for me to kind of represent their voice today. But the reason that I'm sharing their stories is because it might not be a case that everything I shared in part one from my own story resonates, but perhaps the lady that shared about the connection with her husband, or the lady that shared about postpartum hair loss, maybe you can find or resonate a little bit with their story instead. But just in closing, the reason that I wanted to talk about hair loss, and the reason I wanted to bring it to the table, was because I don't want us to remain in the silent majority. I do want us to start to use our voices. I don't want us to fall into the lie of what we're going through, whether it be hair loss or anything else in life, really. I don't want us to diminish what we're going through and thinking that it's less important than the person to the left or the right of us. So, as I continue to create this little community on podcasts, firstly, thank you so much for supporting me as I'm learning to talk off the cuff, rather than entertaining the little Miss Perfect in me that thinks it all has to be written down and learned off by heart so that it lands just so. So going into 2024, to continue for me to curate this little community, I want to be a safe place where you can come, where the issues of life are being discussed, and they're being discussed in a real way, where you can hear something that actually helps you breathe, or you can hear something that you think, actually I can identify with that resonates with me. I'm glad to know, most importantly, that I'm not the only one anyone that's walking through that or dealing with that. Yeah, so for me, it's all about us helping each other to break these lies and to build up the truth. So thank you so much for joining me today. As I always say with these podcast episodes, should there be anything in it that you think could actually resonate with somebody else in your world, please feel free to pay it forward. Thank you so much for all your support. I look forward to being back with you in 2024. Have the most wonderful Christmas and the beginnings of your new year. I will see you in 2024. In the meantime, as always, stay encouraged.